But let me get back to the design factor, because one of the factors I think that you also alluded to is right now it's in the hands of a few people, all right, who are by trial and error trying to fuddle their way through. I think I don't always have the sense that there's like a Steve Jobs who's very crystal clear on what the thing should do. I think it's more like trial and error. Let's see what works, and then we'll figure out a use for it, which is one way of designing something. My question to you, and this is one of my stupid questions that I keep asking, and I've gotten some answers to them, but I'm dissatisfied with them. I think LLMs are a great starting point. I think they're really just a starting point. If I think of some of my large clients, if I were those clients, I'm not going to, 3-letter companies, I would say, who are these other companies dictating to me what the design of this model is and how it's used? And okay, it's one thing to be in the cloud, but now to be, there's a certain vulnerability to putting all your eggs in a couple baskets here. My question has always been, well, shouldn't a large company have its own LLM for legal and security reasons and for functionality reasons? Maybe that's too much. People say that's too expensive. But maybe from a different perspective, what's your take? Do you think that the future has that in store? Will we have a democratization of this technology where companies can more actively determine how this technology is used and how it's literally designed, also from its features? Mm-hmm. Do you foresee?
Yeah, I hope so. Let me quickly just give you, I'll tell you a bit of a story, because it's, when you talk about passion journey, it was a key part of my passion journey. So, while I was at Apple, Tuesday afternoons would be software review. And, this was, a conference table, the board table set up with however many, machines were required, load software up in whatever status it was supposed to be in. And Steve would move from chair to chair. And you weren't allowed to tell him what he was looking at. You weren't allowed to preface him, weren't allowed to tell him anything about anything. He had to sit, and he sat down very carefully, put his hand on his mouse. I can see it so perfectly. And then he just kind of start clicking and navigating around. And I always took away from that. And that's actually when people come to me and ask for, feedback and reviews on software. That's very much the mindset I take, because I think it's one of the most interesting things is to have the experience of someone with a beginner's mind every time looking at the software, because you find where the gaps are when they aren't told what to do. This is part of the era when we were shipping out Macintoshes without any manuals. We were trying to reduce paper. It was actually a lot about cost, but it was also about making it like, can you actually just start the thing and not have any instructions? Is it
intuitive? That's, I think, one of the brilliance of Steve Jobs.
And if those buttons don't make sense, you have something that pops up and tells you about it. But you have to. But the only way you know that is when you start when you have a true beginner's mind reacting to it. And it was a different experience when we were dealing with professional tools, because that was a different world and so forth. But that was a very formative experience for me, and I take it through as every time I talk to somebody about their products. Now that's informative now, because I find that there's a big gap in terms of how the products, or at least when I receive them, what I feel is missing is part of the dialogue that's happening in the creation of them. Now, I don't have that inside view to know exactly how they're making decisions, but it doesn't feel to me like it's being designed with the beginner's mind in mind. One, it's being designed generally by extraordinary experts, people who understand how these tools function better than anyone outside of the companies.
Highly technical people.
And their ultimate goal, in a large part, is not about making a tool that works for you and me. It's about making a tool that will replace you and me. So why do they care how it works? Now, I do believe that'll change, because you could say that there's a bit of an echo here of what the world felt like in the early 80s before, go back and pull up the Macintosh Super Bowl ad, and that hammer flying towards the screen was about breaking people from being chained into these desks and and that we were actually going to make computers for people. That's what it's called. The
computer for the rest of us was the slogan that stuck with me.
Exactly. Yep. And so finally that came out, and people went, I want that. And it wasn't just take your Mac at home. It was the entire world of Microsoft and all of those sort of personal computers that flooded the entire corporate world as well. People wanted machines that worked for them as an individual, and in aggregate across an entire company, you wanted machines that would work for each of the individuals, because without individual humans, a company does not exist other than the book value of the assets that exist in a warehouse somewhere, right? So it was all about that and that amplifying of people.